For our audience, this is Denise Meridith. Denise is a, she's a lot of things, but one of them is she's a trailblazer. She did things on the cutting edge, the cusp, before others did it. She opened the door for others in your leadership Bureau of Land Management position for the federal government. Not only were you the first woman, but you were the first woman of color as well. You've done some other amazing things. It is an honor that we've gotten to know each other and cross paths. And I'd like to start by asking you a question, Denise, and we only try to keep this about 15, 20 minutes
Okay,
because I want people to get to know you, not just
sure.
what you do.
Exactly.
Because what you do is easy to find out, but to get to know you is not that easy. Not that you keep people at a distance, but if they don't have a way of getting to know you, all they have a way of is getting to know what you do. So I'm more interested in exposing who you are, why you live this life, and then a little bit of a plug at the end. So one of the things that you know, Denise, that I often speak very openly about is this acronym I created called GAS, which is it stands for give a shit. And the one thing that I believe that all of us can never learn. We can't go to school for it. We can't get a degree in it. We can't read a book on it. We can't get training in it, is to know to learn how to give a shit. And the one thing I recognized in you immediately is that you, dear, have a lot of gas. You could not have done the things you did in your life without it. So where do you think, Denise, that comes from inside of you?
For me, it's pretty easy to identify. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't have this advantage, but I had two outstanding parents. Okay, they're married for 43 years, so right there, that's something different. And they were both trailblazers. So my dad, I call him the Renaissance man, but he played amateur tennis when Black people weren't supposed to be doing that. He was a musician, played in big bands. He was an artist, a photographer, a
Oh
writer.
God.
So he was a pretty good role model, okay? And he traveled.
Wow.
Then he's a veteran too. So he was in the army, so he traveled around the world. My mom, on the other hand, was more the community organizer, okay? So she's like head of the PTA and church group and blah, 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 blah. She was really into animal protection, Humane Society, et cetera, et cetera. So I had those kind of talents, creative talents over here. And then with my mom, I had the organizational talents and communication talents. So you put those together and out popped me.
So
And I,
so go ahead. I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
uh, I came along pretty late. I was sort of a surprise, one of those surprise babies, but it was, I don't know, God always puts you where you need to be when you need to be there. So that's the way I look at it. And so he put me here to do exactly the things that I've done so far.
So, it's interesting. Your story, I basically, I'll play back what I heard is that you are a trailblazer because your parents were. Because your parents, your father was a Renaissance man and your mother was this beautiful community organizer. And, for things that mattered and had so you were just perpetuating that which was all around you, the environment you were in. And my story is very similar. My message of, it's good business to make a difference in the lives of those we do business with and seek business from, which is the mission of the Secret Sauce Society. And I consider the Secret Sauce. That came from my family. I grew up in a very similar family. My father also was a bit of a Renaissance man. So I think that's something we really should pause on, that coming from a family where there's not just love, but where there's people who live a go for it life.
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
Your parents lived to go for it life.
exactly.
My
Right.
parents lived to go for it life. You know, you became you and I became me. So that explains a lot. So you knew you wanted to achieve. Um, when do you think, because you and I are in the latter stages of our professional life,
Mhm.
um, when do you feel you had, or did you have for most of your life or different periods? I always say clarity is what makes us dangerous in the best way, right?
Yeah,
And so
right.
few of us actually have clarity. And you and I have had clarity and then we've lost it and then
Oh, wow.
we've had it and then we've lost it, right? When,
A little too
when
much clarity.
um, when do you think you had the greatest clarity in your life, and what outcomes did that create for you?
Well, probably you have to have a lot of, well, not a lot, but you have to have some negative things happen in order to wake up, so to speak. So mine, here I'm in this very creative environment, grew up in New York City, very integrated neighborhood. We had some of everybody in our neighborhood, German, literally living next door to a Jewish family, et cetera, et cetera.
I grew up in a similar neighborhood
Exactly.
in New
And
York.
so you sort of thought that's the way the world was, okay? And my parents never said you couldn't be anything. So I said I wanted to be a veterinarian. Of course, thrilled my mom because she's a big animal rights person. And so we were moving in that direction. Cornell was the only ag school in New York, or pretty much in the northeastern part of the United States. So everything was geared towards going to Cornell. And we did it. You had to plow it out. It was a definite plan. People just don't wind up at Cornell. I hate to say it that way, but they really
Well,
just don't wind up.
Cornell is an Ivy League school. It's super competitive to get into. You obviously had good grades, and you went to Cornell and you graduated with what?
BS in wildlife biology because I couldn't be a vet. So
Now, why couldn't you be a vet?
Cornell really shaped my future because they had a quota of one woman a year in a vet school at that time. I'm old, so this was
So
before
one woman a year and how many men?
all the rest of whatever their admission
Uh,
class was.
Hundreds.
Yeah, so it was, and I knew it was the one was not going to be me because we're talking about, I went there in 69, so it's still talking about the 70s. We're still talking about civil rights hadn't really reached all parts of the United States yet. So I went there, and one, it was like going to be impossible for me to get there because in order to get into vet school, you had to work for a vet during the summer. I go down to the career area, and they said, we don't hire women with vets during the summer. So there's really a lot of obstacles that you weren't going to get there. And at the same time, I went there. I always say I went to school during the revolution, which was true. So you're having Kent State and anti-war
Right. Right.
demonstrations, women's rights. Um, and so I sort of had a revelation, not revelation, but I, like so many young people are experiencing now, felt pretty suicidal because here you'd spent your
Really?
whole, yeah, you'd spent your whole life working towards something, and then you weren't going to be able to do it, and there was nothing you had control over why you weren't going to be able to do it. It's just that the way it was. And I had thought the world was changing, but here you are, the reality of racism, sexism is right in your face, and it didn't look like it was going to change any
You were
particular.
getting double hit on,
Yeah,
right?
and yeah,
Because
and
you're a woman and a woman of color.
yeah. So it was like, what the hell, you know? And I think a lot of younger people feel that for different reasons, but it was like, what's the future? And you can't get what you want, even doesn't matter about your qualifications or anything like that.
So
It's
you
just,
went through a depression,
yes. And believe it or not, Elton John helped me out. The music of Elton John really got to me because he was going through a lot of things that he portrayed in his music. And it really, and I went to his final concert, was here in Phoenix recently. And I had one of the signs said, Elton John saved my life tonight. And because
Aw.
that's the way I felt about him when I was in school. And we actually came to Cornell and performed there. This was before he got really famous. But you never know what's going to change things. So anyway, listening to his music, I decided, what the hell? God put me here to change things. Okay, so I might as well do the most that I can do to change. So really, that was the turning point in my life. I was here to stay. Never had any other thoughts like that again. I was either going to change things or die trying to change things, not die trying to avoid things. So that,
That's
pretty much set
powerful.
me on the
That's
course.
powerful, Denise.
So that set me on the course that I am now.
So then the clarity, going back to the original question then, the clarity you had was exactly that you were going to die trying to change things rather
Yes.
than die doing nothing.
Right. That was it.
Okay, so that was it. So then you were then set on a course. You couldn't be a veterinarian. So then what happened?
Okay, so I came across, uh, literally, I had to, well, everything was against you. So my advisor literally told me black people didn't know how to study, so he didn't know why I wanted to be a vet anyway, et cetera, et cetera. So I finally got rid of him. And and can you imagine? Well, when you think back, what people said in those days is pretty unimaginable now, but those days it was pretty normal. So I came across Dr. Daniel Thompson in the hallway. Again, God puts you where you need to be. Just bumped into a hallway, and he asked if he could help me. I said, "Yeah, I'm looking for an advisor." So he said, "Oh, come talk to me." And it turned out he was a wildlife biologist, and they didn't have any women in wildlife biology. But he didn't say they didn't have women or that they couldn't have women in wildlife biology. So I became one of 3 women that graduated with a degree in wildlife biology. So that sort of set my future with the Bureau of Land Management. I turned out not only, well, I was obviously the first woman that they hired. I was the second African American, but the first black woman they hired. And I went to Nevada, and they only had 6 wildlife biologists in the whole state of Nevada for the Bureau of Land Management. So I broke down a lot of barriers along the way, and I was off and running.
And you worked your way up.
Yeah, and people, again, racism is very inherent. I think in this country, people don't even know when they're being racist because you get a lot of, well, yeah, you zoomed up. No, I didn't zoom up the ladder. There are a lot of detours and a lot of blockages along the way. But eventually, I did.
Well, I should have said you fought your way up then.
Yeah, that's really what happened. So, I wound up, of all things, being the deputy director of the entire agency during the Clinton administration. So I had 10,000 employees, 200 offices, and $1 billion budget.
Is that all?
That's all.
and so how long were you there, Denise?
2 years was enough for the Clinton administration.
Now, how long in the BLM?
Oh, 29 years.
Wow.
29 years.
You really did serve your country.
Yeah, public service, I think, is tremendous. I'd always said the country was lucky because they had these public servants who all could be making a lot more money in private industry. Okay, BLM was an organization of ologists, as I called it. So all the people were ologists, biologists, geologists, paleontologists, whatever. So they're very high skilled, all very highly educated, all very good at science. They could have been making money other places, but here they were in federal government every day, slaving away to protect this country. And what, of course, disturbs me now is all those people are being pushed out. And I sort of worry about—
is not revered in this administration.
No, and I worry about the future because these are the people that were protecting us. So without their expertise, without their dedication, without their commitment, it's going to be not too pleasant world in the future unless we do something.
Well, everything happens, in life. Sometimes we make 2 steps forward and 1 step back.
Definitely.
And I too am afraid that maybe it's like 3 steps back, but I know we'll continue to make, in the grand scheme of things, I know we'll continue to make steps forward. Yeah. So I try to always stay positive with that. And I too come from a similar background. I'm a former environmental scientist, 2 graduate degrees, university adjunct professor. So you and I have such close ties on so many levels, even where we grew up. And I worked for the government, but I worked for a local government, a city government on Long Island. So in case our audience doesn't know, we totally hit it off. We have lots of stories back and forth, and we're only just uncovering more stories. So, so the gas really was kind of injected in you by your parents, and you fought your way to become deputy director of one of the largest federal agencies in this country. You are a trailblazer. So when you retired, how long ago was that?
A long time ago. I was very lucky in that they had an early out, which the federal government hardly ever does. But during an early out period, they say that it's dependent on a number of years and not your age. So guess what? Me starting with BLM 2 weeks out of Cornell, 2 weeks after school, I had a lot of years and no age. So I got to retire very, very early. So I retired in 2002. and
And since then, you've been, is it safe to call you an entrepreneur?
yes, yep, that's
And
it.
how has that been? Just 10,000 feet up, how would you describe that experience for you? Being in government for so long.
I thought it was fascinating. I think, believe it or not, I have this period I call that when I was rich and famous. So actually, right after I left federal government, everything was new here in Phoenix. I was in public relations. And anyway, so I did very, very well, obviously, and for a while until the recession. But anyway, that aside, I found it very interesting that more people are interested in my government background. I would go to meetings and hear to be all these really rich business people and to hear about government, how the government works and everything like that. So it was fascinating. And I sort of used that to help them for some time. So it worked really well. I did really, really well. But what I was going to mention is, believe it or not, Robert Kiyosaki was a client of mine.
Oh, really?
when I was rich and famous, he was a client of mine. But anyway, Rich Dad, Poor Dad had just come out. So what he talked about then, and what I agree with, is that this country, we don't educate people to be entrepreneurs. He was always saying we educate people to be worker bees. That's what we want.
100%.
Go to school, then get a job working for somebody else. That's essentially it.
And I will add on to that. Not only do we not educate them to be entrepreneurs, we don't educate anybody to be emotionally prepared to be business people or entrepreneurs. Because entrepreneurship, in my definition, equals suffering, where you have to have and be able to endure a pretty significant level of failure to figure it out. You've got to fail a lot. And in the corporate world and the government world, you're not supposed to do that. That's not what you do. So it goes against every single thing that we're taught and believe in. So, so let's catch up now.
Okay.
Because I do try to keep these short and to the point. And now people are like getting to know you, right? Your latest passion now, and it's clearly your passion. It comes across the second they meet you. You have this organization called, and it's so funny, the paths of our life. And look what I'm doing with Secret Sauce, and look what you're doing now.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there's so many similarities here, Denise. Right. It's like crazy. I'm not a person of color, but I am Jewish. I was a minority.
That counts.
But I am a male. I am a male. And that's a big thing.
Yeah, right.
And I do have white skin. So I didn't endure a fraction of what you endured. But so the world's best connectors is your passion now. Mm-hmm. This is the canvas that you paint on in life.
Right.
What would you describe as the why? Why are you so passionate about this?
What I'm passionate about at World's Best Connectors is creating an organization that I would want to be a member of, essentially, is what it comes down to. I'm trying to put together all the lessons I've learned from all these I've been in private industry, I've been in government, I've been nonprofit, been in all of it. How do you put all of that together to make an organization that can change the world? I'm still trying to do that from way back. But anyway, from my revolutionary days. So that's pretty much my why, to have a place where people can gather who are sort of like me, and like you, people who want to make changes, who are bright enough to make changes, successful enough to make changes, but just really haven't had the opportunity or the opening to make changes. And I feel if we work together, we're a lot stronger than each individual trying to save the world. If we work together, we can do that. So I wanted a very small, stealth kind of effective organization where everybody knew everybody else, okay? comfortable with everybody else, trusted everybody else, and we're all single-minded in that we're going to make this a better community than it was when we arrived.
You know, we were meant to know each other because, you know, the mission of my organization, it's good business to make a difference in the lives of those we do business with and seek business from. You know, I'm very clear about it. And yours is very similar. And it's a collection of leaders who are there to develop relationships to help one another change not only their lives, their businesses' lives, but change their communities and work in the communities. And, you know, it's funny, our organizations have a very similar mission. We're doing the same thing. Some could even consider us competitors. And that's not even in my consciousness with you. All I want to do is help you because you have the same mission in your life that I have in mine, right?
I think we can still reach two very different audiences because mine is entirely virtual. So
Right.
I don't have what you do very well is putting people together who might hit it off right from the start, so to speak.
But my goal is to make it more expansive in other communities.
Right.
But, you know, look, there's no question we can make a difference in each other's lives.
Oh yeah,
There's no
definitely.
question in my mind, right?
Yeah,
and we're just kind of we're dipping our toe in the water as
exactly.
to figure out like how to do that, right?
Exactly.
Like what I asked of you is I'm looking for diversity.
Right.
I want more women. I want more people of color in my organization.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something I'm always very conscious of. And I don't think, you know, maybe me being from New York and a similar community,
you notice it.
you know, you know, the second I'm in a room, I'm looking around.
Right.
And if I see all white men, I know I did something wrong.
Right.
You know?
Well, a lot of people are, like I said, racism in the United States is sort of inherent. Some people wouldn't even notice. Seriously.
Yeah, but we were raised differently, right? We were raised differently.
Yeah.
We think about the world differently. We recognize that people who are different give us different perspective, which gives us advantage.
Yes.
Which gives us the ability to see the world through somebody else's eyes that helps us grow our business.
Definitely.
Right. And that, I mean, that's the most selfish way to look at it. Never mind the ethical way to look at it. So if people want to find out more about you and the world's best connectors, how would they get in touch with you?
Our website is www.thewbcs.com. So it's thewbcs.com. So that's a good start.
So that, which stands for World Best Connectors, plural.com.
Yeah.
And they could also find you in LinkedIn, yes?
LinkedIn, yeah, Denise Meridith. the way I stay away from spam is my last name is spelled differently, so I will spell it. So it's Meridith, 2 I's. That's why I tell people to remember. It's Meridith. Was a different spelling of Meredith, but that's all they need to do is go on there. I'm very Googleable. That's what I tell people.
So for those that don't know, her organization is all over the country, and these are influential people in a variety, you know, whether it be through community or through business, that have joined her organization to be in these regular programs and meetings that she's created to help make a difference in their lives and their communities' lives. It's called the World's Best Connectors. You should check it out. Denise Meridith is a trailblazer and somebody with a ton of gas. It is such an honor to know you, dear. It really is a privilege, and I am going to continue to find out every way and I can support you and what you're doing.
We're going to work together and make it happen, right?
We will. We absolutely will. So thank you.
Coming.
Thank you so much, Denise. You are a gem. You are a blessing in my life. And I thank you for making time.
Thank you, Andrew. You take care.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.